It's not the uniform that makes a warrior, it's what he chooses to endure when the world stops saluting. What really happens when disrespect meets unshakable calm? Let us know in the comment section below. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that honor those who've served. Tommy Greer didn't flinch. He never did. Not in Afghanistan, not when the blast took his legs, and not when some snot-nosed kid couldn't see past the wheels of his chair. Tommy's hands rested calmly on the black rims of his manual wheelchair. Fingers calloused from years of movement earned the hard way. He sat outside the cafe at Valley Crest Plaza, sun hitting the edge of his Marine Corps cap. Not for attention, just to keep the glare off his eyes. It wasn't here to make a point. Just lunch. Just peace. That's all. Then came Khalid Monroe. 18, cocky, with that lopsided grin kids get when they've never been hit hard enough by life to stop smirking, the kind of smirk that doesn't fade until someone wipes it off for good. Caleb strutted out from the food court with his pack trailing behind him, Bryce, Logan, and the one kid whose name Tommy never caught, the one who always looked like he regretted his friends, but never enough to walk away. "Yo!" Caleb said too loudly, his voice bouncing off the tiled walls, drawing curious glances. "Look who got himself VIP parking. Front row seat and everything. All he's missing is a popcorn bucket." The others chuckled. Logan muttered something under his breath about discount tickets for the crippled. Bryce snorted. Tommy didn't move. He looked up, slowly, eyes behind his aviators hidden but locked. There it was, the silence. Not passive, not nervous, just there. And it rattled Caleb more than he'd admit. "You deaf, bro?" Caleb stepped closer, his paper soda cup swaying in his hand. "I said, I heard you," Tommy said. His voice was low, like gravel soaked in history. Not loud, not threatening, but the kind of voice that made you feel like something important was about to happen, and you'd better not miss it. Caleb leaned in, smirk curving cruelly. "Then say something funny back, or are you one of those mute war hero types who just stares and hopes people feel bad enough to give you a cookie?" Tommy blinked once. "You finished?" A pause. The group behind Caleb shifted, some amused, some now just awkward. Bryce looked at the passers-by, watching them. "Damn," Logan whispered. "This dude's got balls." "Yeah," Bryce added. "Metal ones." The laughter reignited. Caleb didn't laugh. He didn't like how the man in the wheelchair wasn't playing along. He liked the idea of pushing someone who'd push back. He didn't like feeling ignored, or worse, measured. "Where'd you serve, old man?" Caleb asked, pacing a slow half-circle around Tommy. "Let me guess, you got your legs blown off doing something dumb? Or maybe you just used the vet thing to skip lines and look noble. That it?" Tommy's hand stayed on his lap. "You're too young to understand the sound of a man bleeding out next to you," he said, gaze locked forward. "Too stupid to know the cost of quiet. And too empty to be worth my time." Now there was no laughter. Just tension. Bryce fidgeted. Logan looked away. The nameless friend whispered, "Maybe we should go." But Caleb stepped closer. He didn't like being challenged, not by someone older, not by someone in a chair. To him, manhood came from how many people looked at you, not how many you stood beside when no one else would. "What if I told you to roll on out of here?" Caleb hissed. "Think I won't tip that chair over and watch you squirm?" Tommy didn't blink. "Try." It wasn't a dare, it was a test. And that was when Gunnery Sergeant Elena Castillo turned the corner. She wore civilian clothes, but anyone with a trained eye would clock the posture. Squared shoulders, upright spine, and a chin that never dipped unless to strike. She saw Tommy, then saw Caleb. "Tommy?" she called out. He turned his head slightly. "Gunny, you good?" "I'm fine, just some noise." Caleb looked over, confused. Castillo walked toward them, phone already in her hand, tapping fast. "What, you as nurse or something?" Bryce said weakly. She stopped beside Tommy, gave him a nod, and turned to the boys. "Worse," she said. "I'm family. You got a problem with Staff Sergeant Greer. You got a problem with about 200 people who can get here in less than 30 minutes. Rice scoffed. "Sure. You gonna call in the Marines?" "Already did." She held up her phone, showed a group text titled "Battle Born." Messages flooded in. "ETA 20 minutes. Grabbing Rocco on the way. Tell Tommy we're bringing his favorite." Logan paled. Caleb's smirk cracked. "It's ridiculous," he muttered. "We didn't even do anything." "You showed your character," Castillo said calmly. "We just came to show ours." Tommy rolled his chair back slightly, his voice calm. "You've got time to leave before they arrive. Or you can wait. Up to you." Caleb looked around. Shoppers were watching now. Mall security was approaching from one side. People had phones out. Bryce tugged his friend's arm. "Let's bounce." But Caleb didn't move. His eyes were on Tommy, like he was still deciding whether to act out or back down. Castillo stepped forward, closing the gap. "You're lucky," she said softly. "Because if this had been a different day and a different war, that look in his eyes would have been the last thing you ever saw." Caleb flinched. Tommy said nothing, just waited, and for the first time, Caleb took a step back. No bravado, no punchline, just retreat. They laughed, didn't run, didn't talk, just left. "And Tommy?" He turned back toward the cafe, adjusted his cap, and rolled forward without another word. 30 minutes later, the unit showed up anyway, and that's when things really started. They came in trucks. Not military trucks, not anymore, but pickups, SUVs, Harleys, vehicles that carried more memory than horsepower. They came wearing jeans and boots, some with leather vests bearing patches, others with faded unit shirts and old campaign caps. There was no fanfare, no announcements, just presence, weight, the kind of silence that could hold a room better than applause ever could. The first to arrive was Rocco. Mike Roccaforte, 6'3" of marine muscle with a scar running down his jaw like a warning label. He walked with a limp that told its own story, and carried a thermos in one hand, a duffel bag in the other. When he saw Tommy sitting outside the cafe, he didn't wave, he just nodded, the kind of nod men share when words aren't needed. "Still pissing off teenagers, huh?" Rocco said, dropping the bag beside the table. Tommy smirked faintly. "Thinking I'd remind the world I'm still here." "Looks like you reminded them too well." More vehicles rolled up. Gunnery Sergeant Castillo stood nearby, arms crossed, watching as the others arrived. By now, shoppers had all but stopped pretending not to look. A few stood across the courtyard, whispering, filming. A small child asked her father, "Are they soldiers?" The man hesitated before replying, "No, they're something different." Within 10 minutes, the plaza had quietly become something else. A gathering. A formation. Men and women from different generations, different units, all drawn to one center. Tommy Greer. There were handshakes. Hugs, with backpats loud enough to echo. There were names like Dobbs, Cutter, A.J. Collins, and Doc, a Navy corpsman who looked like he could still perform field surgery blindfolded. Nobody asked why they were there. They already knew. One of their own had been tested. That was enough. "Anyone got eyes on those punks?" Dobbs asked, his voice thick with southern twang. Castillo shook her head. "Gone. Slunk off before you got here." "Cowards always run," Rocco said, taking a seat next to Tommy and unscrewing the thermos. He poured black coffee into a steel cup, slid it across the table. "Still drink it like motor oil?" Tommy nodded once. "Still taste better than the chow hall sludge." As they sat, civilians began to shift. Some approached, hesitantly. One man, mid-40s, wedding ring, a touch of hesitation in his posture, stepped forward, hands slightly raised. "Excuse me," he said to Tommy. "I just wanted to say, what those kids did, it wasn't right. I saw part of it. You handled it like a gentleman. I wanted to say thank you for your service and for today." Tommy looked up at him, that same unreadable expression behind the aviators. "You don't have to thank me," he said. "Just don't stay quiet when you see it happen to the next guy." The man swallowed hard, nodded, and stepped back. More people came. A young mother with her toddler handed Tommy a drawing the child had made while sitting nearby. It was messy, crayon-smeared, but unmistakable. A man in a wheelchair, surrounded by stick figures with hats. She whispered, "He said, that's you and your friends." Tommy looked at it, blinked once, and tucked the picture under his plate. Castillo moved to the center of the group. "All right, you all know why you're here. And you also know it's not about revenge. We're not here to start something. We're here to finish it," Doc muttered. "No," Castillo said firmly. "We're here to be seen." "That's it. They came for one. Now they see the unit," Rocco added. "People need to remember that respect isn't given out of fear. It's given out of recognition. They disrespected Tommy because they didn't recognize what he's carried, what we've carried." Tommy leaned forward, voice even. "I'm not here to teach them a lesson. I'm here to remind them that we're still part of this country, even when we're out of uniform. They don't get to act like our war ended just because the shooting stopped." Dobbs grinned. "You give the speech. I'll stand behind you and look scary." The group chuckled. Then AJ stepped forward, the youngest of the group, barely out of his 20s, clean-shaven, with the energy of a man still learning how to sit still. He pulled out his phone, tapped a few buttons, then held it up to show them something. "They uploaded it," he said. "What?" Castillo asked. "The kids. Someone got footage of them heckling Tommy. It's online. Already has a few thousand views. Comments are roasting them." Tommy frowned. "I don't want this to turn into a circus." "It's not," AJ said. "It's turning into something else. People are talking about it. Other vets are commenting. There's a guy from Oregon who said he's organizing a Roll with Respect march for disabled vets next week. And look at this." He swiped again. Notification. Valley Crest Mall issues statement condemning harassment of veteran. Tommy didn't smile, but something behind his eyes shifted. Castillo looked at him. "You didn't ask for this, Tommy. But maybe it was time." Rocco added, "You just showed a whole generation what it means to stand your ground without raising your voice." Tommy exhaled slowly, taking another sip of coffee. "Then let's give them something worth seeing." By the time the local news van rolled up 20 minutes later, the group wasn't posturing. They weren't protesting. They were just gathered. One table, dozens of chairs pulled from the cafe and surrounding businesses. Marines shoulder to shoulder, telling stories, drinking coffee, playing cards. A reunion disguised as resistance. And Tommy? He was at the center of it, listening more than he spoke, but when he did, people leaned in. Not for pity, for presence. When the reporter approached, a young woman, nervous but determined, she asked if someone would be willing to speak on camera. Tommy looked at Castillo. She shook her head. "This is your moment." He turned to the reporter. "We're not here to talk about what happened. We're here to show what happens next." And behind him, as the camera began to roll, the Brotherhood stood. Not in formation, but in unity. Still, strong, and seeing the video spread like a slow-moving fire. Not viral in the way memes catch on and die overnight, but deep, steady, and building. It started with a single upload on a local Facebook page, a grainy clip of a veteran in a wheelchair refusing to back down from a group of mocking teens. A moment. That's all it was. But in that moment, people recognized something they hadn't seen in a while. Not anger, not self-pity, not confrontation for the sake of drama, just quiet defiance. Dignity. By the next morning, national veteran groups had shared the clip. News sites picked it up. Comment sections filled with fury, support, tears, pride. And somewhere, in the middle of it all, Tommy Greer was trying to drink a cup of coffee in peace. But again, he sat at a table inside the same cafe now, facing the entrance. The Marines had stayed late into the evening the day before, but most had gone home by nightfall, content in the knowledge that their presence had done what it needed to. A few were still around, Castillo, of course, and Rocco, who took up a booth behind Tommy and pretended to read the newspaper. Tommy knew better. Rocco hadn't read a newspaper in years, but he appreciated the theater of it. "I don't need babysitting," Tommy said quietly. Rocco didn't look up. "And I don't need another cup of this burnt swill, but here we are." Crowd's gone. Not all of them. That's when the door opened again, and Caleb Monroe walked in. Alone. No Bryce, no Logan, no backup. Just Caleb, in a hoodie and jeans, shoulders hunched like he was trying to look smaller than he'd ever allowed himself to look before. He paused, 2 steps in, clearly unsure of whether to proceed. Then he saw Tommy. Their eyes locked. Tommy didn't blink. Neither did Caleb. Rocco exhaled and folded his paper. "You want me to stand up?" "No." "You sure?" "No." Caleb walked over. His steps were slower now. Measured. Less of a strut, more like a boy approaching his father after breaking a window. And, to some degree, that's exactly what it felt like. He stopped about 3 feet from the table. "I thought I might find you here," Caleb said. Tommy said nothing. "I saw the videos, the articles. My mom, she saw it too, and my coach. They both asked if it was real." "Was it?" Tommy asked quietly. Caleb looked down. "Yeah." Silence stretched. Rocco tilted his head slightly, still watching but not interfering. "I came to say I'm sorry," Caleb said. Tommy stared at him. "You can say that. And maybe you even mean it. But what do you think changes?" Caleb looked lost. I don't know. I just thought that you'd clear your conscience." Tommy's voice was even. "That one apology erases what you did with your friends, or how you made others feel before me? Because I saw you, Caleb. I saw the look in your eyes. You weren't just mouthing off. You enjoyed it." Caleb's face tightened. I thought it was a joke." "You thought I was a joke." Caleb stepped back. Tommy's voice never rose. That was what made it worse. Caleb had faced yelling, been grounded, suspended once. But no one had ever looked at him like that. Like he wasn't even worth raising a voice for. "You see this chair?" Tommy asked, tapping the armrest lightly. "This isn't who I am. It's what I use, what I earned. But you looked at it and thought less, thought weakness." "I didn't understand," Caleb muttered. "That's the only honest thing you've said so far." Caleb's eyes burned, not with anger, with something heavier. "You're right," he said. "I was trying to be funny, I thought. I thought no one would care." Tommy tilted his head. "But now they care." "I didn't come because of the video," Caleb said suddenly, desperation creeping into his voice. "I came because my dad, he's a vet. I never told you that. Army, 2 tours in Iraq. We don't talk much, not since he left." Tommy's jaw flexed. "I saw the video," Caleb went on. "And he didn't yell at me. He didn't call me names. He just said, 'That man handled you better than I ever could have.' Then he hung up. The weight of that sat between them for a long beat. "I came because I want to fix it," Caleb said. "I want to make it right." Tommy looked at him. Really looked at him. The kid had fire. Not the kind that burned others for fun, but the kind that could maybe be directed, refined. If someone took the time, "Then you'll help at the stand down next week?" Tommy said finally. Caleb blinked. "What?" "Veteran resource event. Homeless outreach supply distribution. Rocco and I volunteer every year. You'll be there." Caleb hesitated. "Okay. Yeah. Whatever you need. And not because you're trying to look good online. Because you owe, not just me, everyone who ever got ignored while you looked away. You'll listen. You'll learn. You'll lift boxes and clean trash and serve food without saying a damn word." Caleb nodded slowly. "Yes, sir." Tommy narrowed his eyes. "Don't call me sir. That title belongs to officers, and I wasn't one. And what should I call you?" Tommy smirked. "Greer's fine, or Staff Sergeant, if you want to get formal." "Yes, Staff Sergeant." "Good. Now go." Caleb turned, walking toward the door. As he reached it, Rocco called out without looking up from his folded paper. Caleb turned. "You show up next week late or lazy," Rocco said, "and I will read the paper with you under it." Caleb nodded sharply. "Understood." The door shut behind him. Tommy picked up his coffee again, took a sip. "You think he means it?" Rocco shrugged. "Time will tell." Tommy looked out the window, where Caleb was walking away, hands in his pockets, head down, but not like before. This time there was something thoughtful in his pace. A quiet gravity. "Maybe the kid's not hopeless after all," Tommy said. Rocco chuckled. "None of them are. Just waiting to be taught the right war to fight." The air buzzed with low conversation, the kind that hums across parking lots before sunrise when everyone's gathered for something more important than sleep. Folding tables were set up beneath pop-up tents. Boxes of donated clothes, blankets, and socks lined the sidewalk like a makeshift warehouse. Volunteers passed out thermoses of hot coffee. Local veterans organizations manned stations for medical support, housing resources, and job placement assistance. And at the heart of it all was Tommy Greer. He sat behind the intake table wearing a black hoodie with the Marine Corps emblem stretched across the front, a clipboard balanced on his lap. Beside him, Rocco sorted toiletry kits with mechanical precision, grumbling about cheap razors but making sure each bag was complete. Caleb Monroe was sweating through his shirt. He'd arrived early, earlier than anyone expected, and hadn't stopped moving since, first unloading boxes from a van driven by Castillo, then restocking snack stations, now hauling bottled water crates across the parking lot to the hydration tent. He didn't speak much, just nodded when told what to do and did it fast. Tommy watched him from time to time, making no comment. Around mid-morning, a line of people began forming, mostly older men with sun-beaten skin, unkempt beards, and hollow eyes that had forgotten what welcome felt like. Some wore fatigue jackets from wars no one wanted to talk about anymore. Some carried duffel bags duct-taped together. Others had nothing at all. One by one, they stepped up to the table. Tommy greeted each the same way: steady eye contact, a handshake if it was accepted, and a short conversation. Not just name and branch, but how long you been out here, and what can we help with today? He listened without interruption, wrote down notes, called for medical if needed, and when he was done, they moved on to the next tent with a little less weight in their step. Caleb saw it, all of it. At one point, he paused near the edge of the table, watching Tommy speak to an older black man named Carl, who'd lost 3 toes to frostbite last winter. Tommy handed Carl a coat. "This one's insulated. I used the same kind during recon ops. Kept me warm when the world wanted to freeze me out." Carl laughed, raspy and raw. "You're good people." "No," Tommy replied. "I just remember what cold feels like." After Carl walked off, Caleb spoke up. "How do you do it?" Tommy glanced at him. "Do what?" "Keep giving." "After everything." Tommy looked past him toward the tents. because someone once handed me a blanket when I came home with nothing, because there's always someone colder, hungrier, closer to the edge, and because service doesn't stop when the uniform comes off. Caleb nodded slowly. I think I get it. No, you don't, Tommy said, not unkindly, but maybe one day you will. The stand-down event stretched into the afternoon. Music played from a Bluetooth speaker set up near the supply tent. Nothing fancy, just familiar tunes that sounded like road trips and campfires. Volunteers handed out warm meals donated by local restaurants, chili, cornbread, fruit cups. Caleb manned the food line like a man on a mission, even helping some of the older vets carry trays back to the shaded seating area. One of them, a frail Vietnam vet named Harry, patted Caleb on the shoulder and said, Bet you never thought you'd spend your Saturday helping out old war dogs, huh? Caleb grinned, sweat dripping down his temples. No, sir. But I'm glad I am. Late in the afternoon, a woman from the mayor's office arrived to present a proclamation thanking the volunteers and especially highlighting Tommy Greer's continued dedication to the veteran community. Tommy didn't want a speech, didn't care for ceremony. But when the woman called his name and the crowd began to applaud, he wheeled forward, cleared his throat, and said a few words. I don't need recognition, he began, eyes sweeping over the crowd, but I'll accept it for one reason. To remind anyone watching that veterans don't fade. We transition. We continue. We build each other up. Because service doesn't stop with the discharge. He nodded to the volunteers. This wasn't about me. This was about us. Every set of hands that showed up, every warm smile, every plate served, every kind word offered. That's what today was. And I hope the ones who came to mock understand now. There's a different kind of strength here. One that doesn't raise a fist. One that reaches out. Then he looked at Caleb, held the stare for a beat, and some of us were learning. The applause was stronger the second time. Not louder, just more real. Later, as the sun began its slow descent, casting long amber shadows over the plaza, Tommy and Caleb sat side by side, sipping cold water from paper cups. You did good today, Tommy said. Caleb shifted uncomfortably. Still feel like I've got a long way to go. Tommy shrugged. So do I. They sat in silence for a moment before Caleb asked, You think we could do this again? Tommy looked at him. You mean next year? No, I mean more often. Help people, serve. You know, not just when the cameras show up. Tommy smiled, for real this time. Now you're starting to sound like one of us. From behind them, Castile's voice rang out, teasing but warm. Don't let it go to your head, Monroe. We don't give out challenge coins for one good day. Caleb stood up, stretched, and looked around at the fading crowd. It's not about the coin. No, Tommy said, nodding with approval. It's not. Rocco appeared beside them, tossing a towel over his shoulder. I hear there's a post-event burger run happening. You in? Tommy looked to Caleb. Yeah, Caleb said. I'm in. Then move, boot, Rocco grinned. Last one to the grill buys fries. As they walked off, man, Marine, and former mocker turned volunteer, the last rays of sunlight slipped behind the horizon, leaving the plaza quiet again. But not the same, because now people would remember what had happened here. Not just the harassment, not just the confrontation, but the choice that followed, to come together, to rise above, to stand even when seated in a wheelchair. And that choice, made over coffee, boxes of socks, and trays of food, became the kind of strength that doesn't fade with time. It multiplies,